Time now for our rants and raves, starting with Dan Kennedy.
I have a rave for the Southern Poverty Law Center and a rave for advocacy journalism because their website, Hate Watch, obtained more than 900 emails that Stephen Miller, President Trump's immigration guy, sent to Breitbart before the 2016 campaign. And he was forwarding links from white supremacist websites, extremist websites. He was forwarding angry comments about efforts to take down the Confederate flag and basically urging Breitbart, you know, this is good stuff, go after this. And it was really, really good reporting on the part of the SPLC, sort of thing that we'd like to see the media do, but in this case the leak went to the advocacy group, and now it's starting to spread to the mainstream media. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for Miller to resign over this. It was.
Did he send it to any other news media? Or
he was just working the Breitbart angle.
Wow.
He was sending it to a woman named Katie McHugh, who was known for her anti-Muslim writings. And she was so extreme that Breitbart finally fired her. But now she has disavowed her previous right-wing views, and she supplied this material to the organization.
Interesting. All right, Dan Lothian.
Well, I have a rave for all the reporters out there who have lost jobs or taken buyout as there's been this constriction in the marketplace and are finding new ways to tell good stories. And I'm speaking specifically about those who are coming up with their own newsletters and telling good stories. There were a couple of examples in Tennessee and also a reporter who was working for the Charlotte Observer as well. And they, just had stories as freelancers that they wanted to tell and couldn't find anyone who would pay them to do the stories, and so they started telling stories on their newsletters and were able to break some big stories through their newsletters. And of course the big question now is, how do you make a living?
I was going to say, so do they sell the advertisements?
So it's about getting subscriptions, and so
what about ads?
So you have to, some newsletters do have ads, but it's, if you want to get my exclusive information, then you have to buy in, you have to subscribe, and you have to pay. And there are different structures for different ones. But I think, the big issue with that is you have to have volumes. You have to have a lot of people. If you have 200 people, subscribing, unless you had a $1,000 monthly subscription fee, it would be difficult. So, but what I like about it is that it used to be that if you wanted a big story to break, it had to be handled by the big paper or by the big networks. And now someone with good sources can say, you know what, I'll put it out there, I'll get people to support this, and hopefully those with deeper pockets can pick it up and run with it.
Yeah, good one. All right, Callie.
Well, I have a rave. I think it's a semi-rave, and I'll tell you why. This is the Save Journalism Project. Speaking of people losing jobs, this is a guy who was laid off from BuzzFeed and decided to set up this freelance reporting initiative, hiring reporters to produce 5 reports looking into communities who have lost their local news outlets because of Facebook and Google, potentially. And he's paying them $2 a word. And now he's saying that because in many other situations they might get paid, 40 cents a word or whatever, and you can't do anything with that if you want to try to live. It's 5 reports. They're covering the campaign, looking at the impact of what it means in these communities to have lost their newspapers. The guy's name is John Statton, and he's the co-founder, and he's the former national reporter for BuzzFeed News US. And he lost his job in January of this year. So then he thought, okay, so he's, raise this money. He wants to increase awareness on the topic of job cuts in the media and provide a generous rate of pay to journalists who've been forced into freelancing.
All right.
So,
get it, give him his,
yes,
let's get his number.
My semi-rave is, the reason it's a semi-rave is that I don't want this to be the model for how you pay for local news.
All right,
anyway.
Jen.
So I have a rant about this ad that appeared on the wrap of a lot of newspapers around the country, including the San Francisco Chronicle and the Boston Globe and the Los Angeles Times. People, riveted by the impeachment hearings this week, opened up their newspaper to find this heavily redacted front page with words like White House, whistleblower, ISIS.
Impeachment.
And impeachment hearings.
Yes.
Yeah, and only here in a small disclaimer is an advertisement. So this is actually an ad. You have to open it up to see if it's an ad for a new movie, The Report, which is about the Senate Intelligence Committee investigation into CIA torture after 9/11. While I understand why newspapers need to make money, this concerns me because distorting fact and fiction at a time when we're under siege, as we've just been talking about, for fake news just doesn't seem to help us.
Plus, it
very
was
much.
darned confusing. It was like,
Well,
what
that's
is this?
the thing. I don't find it unethical. I think it looks like crap.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that you're going to
confusing.
pick it up and throw it out and then say, where's my globe?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It gets your attention, though, right? Whenever there are things that you can't see, you want to
Doesn't
know what's
get my
behind it.
attention.
Okay,
was definitely
that's
good
one time you can do that.
advertising.
Now
Oh,
it's
they've
over.
done it before.
Well, yeah, you know,
All
one
right.
time works.
Finally tonight, I have a rant, big time, for CNN, Wolf Blitzer was interviewing Kellyanne Conway yesterday and says he's got an important question to ask, and it has to do with her husband. Here, let's take a little clip.
It's a political question. It's a substantive question. I don't want to talk about your marriage. I know that there are issues there. Your husband, George Conway, he's a lawyer.
What did you just say?
Your husband, George
No,
Conway.
did you just say there are issues there? You don't want to talk about marriage?
I don't want to talk about. No, I don't want to
Why
talk.
did you say that?
Because he's a legal scholar. He's a lawyer, and he was really going after the president of the United States, and he was all over
and the relevance
television
is,
yesterday.
And come on.
I just
Wait
want you
for
to-
it, drum
I just-
roll. And he's married to me?
So I thought she made it really good. But first of all, he didn't mean there are issues there. He meant she doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
Those are the issues.
Right.
But it implied that there was issues
there
in the
did.
marriage.
Yes, it did.
But she is absolutely right.
She is
There were
right.
1,000 other people who have said exactly the same kind of critical things that George Conway had said, including Jeffrey Toobin, as she pointed out. You want to roll in a soundbite of a critic of Donald Trump, you don't have to pick her husband. It was embarrassing, and it went on. That exchange went on forever, and Wolf was totally flummoxed as well. He should have been. And I'm sure after the show was over, somebody reamed out their idea where that one says, let's not do that again.
Why are they interviewing her? That's
Yeah.
what I was
Why
wondering.
are they having
You
her
know,
on?
yeah.